Approach to hypertension. As we all know, hypertension is a major killer in the world. It accounts for about 57% of stroke related deaths in India and about 24% of coronary artery disease related deaths in India. So management of hypertension is really important. So the most important step in management of hypertension is measuring BP correctly. So this is very important because about 30 to 40% of the patient which I see in my OPD are wrongly diagnosed as hypertension by measuring BP using wrong BP apparatus or uncalibrated BP apparatus. So how do you measure blood pressure? So one thing is cuff size. Cuff size should be 80%, its length should be 80% of arm circumference patient, and 40% its width should be 40% of arm circumference. So if patient, if this does not satisfy, then you apply a correction factor. Why this correction factor is important? Because if a patient is obese and you use normal size BP cup which we use for a normal adult male, then BP would be falsely recorded high. Or if you use a bigger BP cup for a smaller arm, then BP would be falsely recorded low. In such cases, you apply a correction factor. Correction factor is 32.5 minus 1.05 into arm circumference in centimeter. This is in centimeter. Okay, so whatever value you get, if it is positive, then you add it to the BP. Okay, if it is negative, then you subtract it from the BP. Okay, so this is important about BP size, BP cuff size. Then second thing is position of the patient. What position is sitting position with legs should not be crossed, with arm resting on a table at the level of his heart. Patient should be relaxed. Usually it is said that patient should relax for about 30 minutes. However, it is not feasible in clinical practice, so at least about 5 minutes of relaxation, that is by the time you ask him his name and in general the history, at that time should record the BP. Okay, so BP should be recorded in both arms on first visit, both arms in first visit, because if there is difference between the two arms by more than 10 millimeters of Hg, it would indicate that there is some atherosclerosis or atheromatous disease of the artery, or there is coarctation of the aorta. You might get unequal BPs, so you can diagnose this condition on this BP. Then next thing is that you record more than 2 readings, generally taken at 5 minutes apart. Okay, so what it does is that if the patient is not relaxed, you might get one BP which is low, one BP which is high. So to confirm that, you generally take more than 2 readings taken 5 minutes apart. And the third important thing that you should remember is that always look for orthostatic hypotension. Many old people with diabetes especially will have orthostatic hypotension due to autonomic instability. So orthostatic hypotension, what you do is that from sitting position to standing, or from supine to standing position, you check BP after 1 minute of standing as well as after 3 minutes of standing. If there is drop in systolic blood pressure more than 20 and diastolic more than 10, then indicates that there is orthostatic hypotension. This is very important because all the drugs what we use are vasodilators in treatment of hypertension. So if the patient has pre-existing orthostatic hypotension, these drugs might worsen it, and patient may have repeated episodes of syncope and fall. Okay, so once you do these things, most of the errors are reduced. There are various other steps, such as the patient should not drink caffeine at least 30 minutes prior to examination, and patient should be completely relaxed, everything. But these are the basic steps which we can follow in our routine OPDs when we are seeing like about 200-300 patients in about 6 to 8 hours. So for that we have to we can minimize the error using these basic steps. The other things, such as history taking and physical examination, I am not going through because the video will become too long if I keep on stressing about history One thing important thing that you should remember is that red flags in history are if patient's age is less than 30 or if age is more than 65 years and is newly diagnosed diastolic hypertension. Okay, these are the important red flags which you need to remember in your history taking. The other important red flag is that if patient has previous history of some hypokalemic periodic paralysis or hypokalemia. Okay, fourth thing is that if patient has some recent physical examination done and and his BP was normal at that examination and now he's come with abrupt onset hypertension. Okay, so these are the important things that you remember. Another important thing is that resistant hypertension. What is resistant hypertension is uncontrolled hypertension using 3 drugs or controlled blood pressure using 4 drugs is resistant hypertension. So resistant hypertension is another indicator of secondary hypertension. Now what is definition of hypertension as per AHA 2017 guideline, which I follow. You can also follow the ESC 2018 guideline, and that what it defines is that normal blood pressure is systolic blood pressure is less than 120 and diastolic blood pressure is less than 80. Okay, then the second thing what they have said is that there is something called as elevated BP. Elevated BP is systolic of 120 to 129 and diastolic is again less than 80. Elevated BP is important because these are at high risk of development of hypertension as well as increase in cardiovascular risk factors. And then the third thing is stage 1 hypertension. Stage 1 hypertension is BP 130 systolic 130 to 139 or is an important term here. Diastolic BP of 80 to 89. Stage 2 hypertension is systolic BP more than or equal to 140 and diastolic is more than or equal to 90. Then something called as hypertensive crisis. Hypertensive crisis is when systolic BP more than 180 or equal to 180 or diastolic more than or equal to 120. So hypertensive crisis could be of 2 types: hypertensive urgency and hypertensive emergency. Hypertensive urgency, where there is no BP is elevated more than 120 180 by 120 without any target organ damage. In hypertensive emergency there is target organ damage. Now what are target organ damage? Target organ damage are involvement of small blood vessels mainly in the brain causing hemiplegia, that is intracranial hemorrhage or stroke. In the eye could be retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy or papilledema, that is stage 4 hypertensive retinopathy. In the heart it could be myocardial infarction. In the lungs it is flash pulmonary edema. In the kidneys it is acute kidney injury. So these are the things, these are target organ damage. So now directly skipping to the treatment of hypertension. So treatment of hypertension, generally if you ask anybody what is treatment of hypertension, they will directly jump to pharmacological therapy, that is ACE inhibitors, ARB or calcium channel blocker. So that is incorrect way of treating hypertension. The basic treatment of hypertension, the main treatment of hypertension is non-pharmacological treatment. So non-pharmacological treatment, why it is important? Because if people do not follow these things, non-pharmacological methods of controlling BP, they are generally develop resistant hypertension. Another important thing is that non-pharmacological therapy can reduce the blood pressure by about 20 millimeters of Hg, which is a huge dip in blood pressure. So if your drugs help you by about 20 or 30 millimeters of Hg, then another 20 could be contributed by non-pharmacological therapy without having any side effects. So what are non-pharmacological therapy? The main important thing is salt restriction. So what generally our normal diet contains about 11 gram of salt. WHO recommends for a normal person the diet salt should be about 6 grams per day, and we are having about 11 grams per day. So Salt restriction is less than 1.5 gram per day of salt. It can reduce the blood pressure by about 6 to 7 millimeters of Hg. Okay, the other thing is something called as DASH diet. DASH diet, the diet here consists of various fruits, vegetables, then salt, which is less than 1.5 gram per day, along with low fiber diet and complex carbohydrates. So this can reduce the blood pressure by about 11 millimeters of Hg. And third thing, which is important, is physical activity. So sedentary lifestyle has deleterious effect on your heart and your brain, on your blood vessels, etc. So main thing is that physical activity. If you are doing moderate physical activity, then 150 minutes per week of moderate physical activity is advised. What is moderate physical activity? Is that riding bicycle at about 5 kilometers per hour, or jogging, or doing all the household activities. If what if person is performing vigorous, then at least 75 minutes per week are to be advised. 75 minutes per week of vigorous activity. Vigorous activity is riding bicycle at about 10 kilometers per hour, swimming, or sprinting. So about 75 minutes per week. That is cumulative for a week, not per day. Okay, if person follows these things, then most of the time the blood pressure may be reduced by about 20 millimeters. The other measures which can be taken are stopping smoking, stopping alcohol. Okay, so apart from these are the major things which are required to control hypertension. Now coming to pharmacological therapy. Now pharmacological therapy, how we will learn pharmacological therapy is take case scenarios. Okay, so whatever the old methods were there, that is use ABCD, where A stands for ACE inhibitor or ARB, B stands for beta blocker, C stands for calcium channel blocker, and D stands for diuretic. This is incorrect. So never follow this sequence, that is ABCD. Okay, what we will do is that we'll take scenarios. Like suppose there is a patient with hypertension, about 50 years old, non-diabetic, no coronary artery disease, no CKD. Okay, so this is a person with no comorbidities, 50-year-old male. So in such cases, what recommendation is that for any case of hypertension, the first choice of drug is ACE inhibitors or ARBs. Now the difference between the two, ACE inhibitors and ARBs, is that ARBs are generally long acting and ACE inhibitors are short acting, that is given 12 tali, that is about 12 hours. This is 24 hours. So these actually require twice daily dosing. This requires once daily dosing. So compliance with this is better. So in my practice, what I do is that I prefer a ARB in a non patient having no comorbidities. The ARBs which I commonly use is telmisartan, azilsartan, or losartan. Okay, so telmisartan, all these drugs are given in OD dosing. Telmisartan is used 40 to 80 milligram per day. Same dose for azilsartan, and this is used 25 to up to 100 milligram per day. So generally I prefer azilsartan because all these studies have shown that azilsartan is a salt sensitizer. Azilsartan has various benefits on cardiovascular risk. So azilsartan is a better drug. Generally I prefer a good brand drug. You can go for any of the good brands for azilsartan or telmisartan. And always remember, do not give telmisartan in BD or azilsartan in BD dose. Use it as a OD dose. You can use maximum as 80 milligram per day. ACE inhibitors are short acting, so if patient has no comorbidities, so generally prefer ARBs. Now this patient is hypertensive, 50 years, no comorbidities. So once I start patient on ARB, if patient is uncontrolled, the general notion would be that increase the dose of ARB. This is not true. So when if it is patient is uncontrolled, then you add a calcium channel blocker. Calcium channel blocker is dihydropyridine type of calcium channel blocker. These are amlodipine, benidipine, and cilnidipine. Okay, amlodipine is given in a OD dose. Maximum dose is 10 milligram per day. You can start with 5 milligram per day, increase up to 10 milligram per day. Amlodipine has a side effect, the common side effect, which is pedal edema, which is not present with these two. So cilnidipine is also commonly used these days. Dose is 5 up to 20 milligram per day. Can be given as OD or BD. If you are giving higher doses, use it as BT. So what you have to do is that when a patient 50-year-old or any age patient with hypertension, no comorbidity, start with ARB. Once if the patient is uncontrolled on ARB, you add a calcium channel blocker before increasing the dose of ARB. So what is the sequence is from A we are going to C. So once it is with A and C it is uncontrolled, what you do is that you increase the dose of ARB and increase the dose of CCB to max dose. So you reach max dose here. Okay, so once it is uncontrolled, you do not increase the dose here, but you add another drug. Once if you add another drug, still it is uncontrolled, then you go for maximum dose. If with this it is not controlled, then you add the third drug, that is diuretic. Diuretics you can generally use are loop diuretic or thiazide-like. Thiazide-like are commonly preferred. This is chlorthalidone, used in a dose of 6.25 milligram OD, generally given in the morning. Okay, if it is still uncontrolled on diuretic, then you add potassium sparing diuretic or a beta blocker. So our sequence would be from A we are going to C, from C we are going to D, from D we are going to potassium sparing, from there we are going back to B, that is beta blockers. So beta blocker are last in this sequence. Okay, ACE inhibitors are generally preferred because of their longer action. They block all the actions of angiotensin 2 as well as they are cardioprotective, renoprotective. So ACE inhibitors are preferred, and for a patient with no comorbidities, I would prefer a angiotensin receptor blocker over a ACE inhibitor because they are long acting. Okay, now the next scenario is patient with coronary artery disease. Okay, now these patients with coronary artery disease, beta blockers are ranked higher up. Beta blockers are ranked higher up because beta blockers are the only drug with maximum mortality benefit in cardiovascular disease. That mortality benefit is about 40%. When they are combined with ACE inhibitor, they are up to 44%. So the drugs which start in patient with coronary artery diseases, ACE inhibitor is the first drug along with beta blocker, the combination drug. Okay, one point I forgot to tell you here is that whenever you start a patient, these two should be a single dose combination. Okay, not a separate drug, because if you give them separate drugs, the compliance is again reduced. So start with a single dose combination of ARB with calcium channel blocker. Okay, here you have to start with ACE inhibitor with beta blocker. Okay, these can be separate drugs. Now ACE inhibitors which are generally preferred in heart disease are ramipril. Ramipril is given in a dose of 5 milligram OD initially, increased to BD, maximum is 20 milligram per day. The other drugs are enalapril and lisinopril. Okay, beta blockers in coronary artery disease used are cardioselective. Cardioselective are metoprolol succinate. Okay, the next drug is bisoprolol and carvedilol. Okay, bisoprolol is generally preferred, given in a dose of 2.5 milligram OD initially, increased to 5 milligram BD. Okay, Metoprolol succinate is important. The word succinate is important because it is long acting. Okay, generally what the drug commonly prescribed is metoprolol tartrate. The beta block we call is metoprolol tartrate, which is short acting, and short acting drugs are not preferred in coronary artery disease. Long acting drugs such as metoprolol succinate given in a dose of 25 mg OD, maximum up to 100 mg OD can be used. Other drug is carvedilol, which has vasodilatory property also, so it has additional benefit in patients with heart failure. So used in a dose of 3.125 milligram BD. Maximum dose could be 20 milligram BD. Okay, so this is in patients with coronary artery disease. Now taking a scenario where 60-year-old male comes to casualty, okay, with BP of more than 180 by 120. So what this classifies is that it is hypertensive crisis. So the general notion is that in any casualty, if you go higher BP, our casualty medical officer generally give a 40 milligram of Lasix. Lasix is furosemide, which is a loop diuretic. So this is completely wrong practice. Okay, one important thing you have to remember is that if you want to lower anybody's BP rapidly, you need to give a vasodilator. Okay, and diuretics are not vasodilators. Diuretic reduce the plasma volume by causing diuresis. So this takes a lot of time. So for rapid lowering of BP, the only drug which you can use is a vasodilator. So giving Lasix is of no use in any patient with hypertensive crisis. Okay, hypertensive crisis, as I said earlier, are of two types: hypertensive urgency, hypertensive emergency. The difference between the two is that hypertensive emergency has target organ damage. Okay, here there is no target organ damage. Okay, so treatment of hypertensive urgency is basically reinstitution of compliance, a reduction in BP over 6 days, 4 to 6 days, 6 days. Okay, slow reduction, and treatment is OPD level. This you need to remember. The treatment for hypertensive urgency, that is no target organ damage, is OPD level. If there is target organ damage, ICU care is mandatory. Okay, and treatment is with IV drugs. IV drugs is very important. Okay, so the drugs which are preferred are clavadipine, enalapril, esmolol. All these three drugs are not available in India. So what are available in India is, one is NTG, that is nitroglycerin, sodium nitroglyceride, okay, and then labetalol. So these three drugs are available. So we generally use these three drugs. So now taking scenarios. Now hypertensive emergency plus pulmonary edema. So, complication here is pulmonary edema. So in such cases, the drug of choice is nitroglycerin. So how we start nitroglycerin is, we start with 5 microgram per minute, increase every 5 minutes to maximum of 400 microgram per minute. So, or till BP control. So what is BP control? So what we do is that in hypertensive crisis, there are two scenarios. Okay, so first scenario is, patient has aortic dissection or has intracranial hemorrhage. In such cases, in first hour, BP should be reduced to 160 by 100. In 6 hours, BP should be reduced to 120 by 80. So that should be rapid control in blood pressure. Okay, so in all other cases, what we do is that in first hour, 25% reduction, After that, in 6 hours, BP to 180 160 by 100. And then in 24 hours, normal. So this is the target. So in pulmonary edema, what is our target is reduction in first hour by 25%. In first 6 hours, reduce the BP to 160 by 100. Then slowly over 24 hours, taper the nitroglycerin infusion and bring it back to blood pressure to normal, and supplement with oral vasodilators. So next scenario is if the patient has stroke, maybe hemorrhage or this. If it is hemorrhage, you follow this protocol. That is, increase the reduce the blood pressure within 1 hour to 160 by 100, and within 6 hours to 120 by 80. If it is ischemic stroke, then there are two scenarios again here. Thrombolysis indicated or no thrombolysis. If thrombolysis is indicated, then you treat if BP is more than 185 by 110. So treatment is basically labetalol IV 20 milligram bolus. Recheck after 20 minutes. If it is uncontrolled, then start infusion at 1 to 3 milligram per kg per hour. Okay. If no thrombolysis, then treatment only if BP is more than 220 by 120. Okay. This is very important, because if you treat blood pressure at 180 by 120 and no thrombolysis is required, and lower the BP rapidly, then it might increase the size of the infarct. So this is very deleterious. So treat only if BP is more than 220 by 120, and if BP is less than that, then wait for 48 to 72 hours and then treat. Okay. After 48 to 72 hours, you treat blood pressure in cases of stroke. Okay. So this is basically how you treat hypertension at OPD level, at periphery, anywhere you can follow this protocol. This is simplified version. This is as per the protocol, but I have simplified it how I remember it, how I follow it at my OPDs as well as at casualty. Thank you.